Hi, my name is Rebecca Bassett, and I'm doing my Cultural Perspectives PowerPoint and presentation on the Native American Indians. The next thing that I'd like to discuss with you was the idea of religion in the Native American culture. I'd learned that there were several hundred American Indian languages, and the word religion was not found in them. This does not mean, as many Christian missionaries have assumed, that Indians did not have religion. Rather, it shows that religion was not a separate category of life, but was closely integrated with the culture. For many American Indian cultures, the focus of religion, particularly the ceremonies, was on maintaining harmony with the world. Next, I'd like to talk to you about different death concepts, such as the afterlife and reincarnation of the Native American Indians. As I was saying earlier, there are various concepts that they have, but some of these concepts include communication between the living and the dead, living and dead souls that pass back and forth between the living and dead worlds. They believe that messages could be sent by way of the deceased, and that names not be mentioned. So I'd like to talk about these ideas of afterlife. Some tribes believe that they could communicate, the living and the dead could communicate with one another, and they also believe that living and dead souls pass back and forth between the living and dead worlds. So one tribe, called the Kondo tribe, which was on the southern plains, believed that by taking their hands and passing their hands back and forth over the deceased body and then over their own body, they were able to send messages by way of the deceased person to someone that had already passed over or had already died into the other world. And that's how they believed that these messages could be sent. They also believed in not mentioning the names of the deceased because they, as we'll go on and talk later, they believed that by mentioning the names of the deceased, it could impede or keep a soul from going over to the next life. Like it was like calling that person back. So sometimes they would go for a long period of time, even so much as a year, without mentioning the person's name. And even when they did mention the person's name later, they did not do it very often because they felt that that could somehow call that person back. In terms of reincarnation, there's a common theme among the North American tribes of reincarnation. They believe, some of those tribes believe in the reincarnation of people and animal as well. And they believe that memories survive, and the elders remember the past because they've lived it through reincarnation. So this was a really interesting point to me because they believe that they can go on and come back into another life. There were several different burial customs, and it varied widely from tribe to tribe. In some of the Arctic tribes, they would leave the bodies of the deceased on the frozen ground to be devoured by animals. In some of the Midwest tribes, they just had lavish furnished tombs that they buried their deceased in. The Northeast tribes often saved the skeletal remains of their deceased. California tribes practiced cremation. West Mountain tribes placed the dead in caves or fissures in the rocks. The nomadic tribes in the Great Plains often buried their dead or left them on a tree, platforms, or scaffolds. They buried their dead if the ground was soft enough to do that, and then or they left them in trees or platforms. There are some tribes that didn't believe in burying the dead and only putting them in the trees or platforms or scaffolds. And then Central and South Atlantic tribes often embalmed or mummified their deceased. As I said earlier, there are a lot of differences, as we've cited among the Native American Indian beliefs about rites, rituals, and burials and so forth of the dead. But there are a lot of commonalities among the Native American in regards to death rituals. Basically, the main theme that is common is helping the deceased to be comfortable in the afterlife. A medicine man would typically lead the ritual. The deceased ancestors are often asked to join in the rituals, and the belief is that the spirit of the person never dies, and that's a common theme among the different tribes. Gifts are often buried with the deceased. Whether they are buried or not, they're often left with the deceased. Generally, pipes are smoked in a circle that's symbolic of the ritual of the circle of life. These are some of the themes that you see in many different tribes. Nature is revered, and death is a part of nature. The burial is often done at a special site, either close to or away from their home. And then the death is believed to be a journey to another world. And these are some of the ideas that are a common feature among the different tribes of Native Americans. Next, I'd like to talk to you about fear of the deceased. Many times, if someone died in the Native American Indian tribe, if the person felt that there was resentment, that the person that died had resentment for the people that were living, or resentment during his lifetime towards someone, they feared that the dead person could come back as a ghost and haunt them. And so that belief led them to go so far as to burn the deceased house, the deceased person's house, or burn their possessions, or both. And often the family would move to a new house or new location to escape the ghost of the deceased. So they had a real fear, of that person being able to actually come back and haunt them. Native American Indian tribes often believed in guiding the spirit of the deceased into the afterlife. And some of the ways that they believed in doing this was, like I had said earlier, some of these tribes believed that you should not bury the body. By elevating the body in a tree or a platform, they believed that helped to hasten the soul of the deceased into the afterlife. By leaving an opening in a burial place or a coffin, they believed that allowed the soul or the spirit of the individual to go on to the afterlife. Sometimes the living people would bury a horse with the body of the deceased so that it could carry the body into the afterlife. And as I had said earlier about not mentioning the deceased person's name out loud, because they felt like if they did that, they would be calling that spirit back to earth, or back to the land of the living. And so that was a way that they helped, they believe they helped to guide that spirit into the afterlife. Some personal thoughts that I like to share with you. After I did this research and studied about the Native American Indians, it made me remember that, and part of the reason I wanted to do some research on them was I had been told most of my life that my family, we had Native American Indian blood, and actually I've been told that we had it on both sides of my family, my dad and my mom's side. My dad got interested in a website called Ancestry.com, and he started doing a lot of research to find out, our family information about our family tree. And I actually have the website up there if anybody would be interested in checking out their own family tree. But anyway, one of the options or things that they allow you to do is to submit saliva to have your DNA tested so that you can find out, absolutely sure, I guess, through the DNA testing, what your ancestry is. And we found out that we had no Native American Indian bloodline on either side of my mother or father's family. We found out that it was mostly all European descent, almost 100%. So that was kind of interesting to me. It had been kind of a family story that had been passed down from generation to generation. My dad said his parents told him, and his grandparents told him, and my great-grandma had told me on my mom's side that we had Indian blood in us. So anyway, that's just a personal note I thought was interesting that I would like to share. Thank you for allowing me to share my information with you.